All right, APUSH, today we're going to talk about restricting rights during wartime. Why does it happen, and what's kind of the slippery slope that we go down when we start restricting our rights? So we're going to see this is a big part of the way that public opinion was shaped during World War I. So the first thing I want you to do is to take a look at the handout, Spies and Lies. So that should be in your hand right now. And just kind of take a look at the imagery. We've got two women that are reading something, probably innocently talking, maybe about troop movements, maybe about their husbands. You've got a guy who looks like he's reading the paper, but he could be doing some other things, right? He could be spying. So look at the language in this particular document, specifically in the second column, where it says, "Don't wait until you catch someone putting a bomb under a factory. Report the man who spreads pessimistic stories, divulges or seeks confidential military information, cries for peace, or belittles our efforts to win the war. And give us their name," okay? It even says, "The fact that you made the report will not become public." I mean, they're pretty much encouraging people to tell on each other. So you've got George Creel, if you see at the very bottom right, George Creel is the chairman of the CPI, Committee on Public Information, and he's a pretty well-known journalist, and so he was put in charge of this sort of propaganda machine and trying to keep the public behind the war. So anyone who threatens that is going to be challenged. So let's take a look at, we've got two laws passed during World War I, 1917, 1918. We've got the Espionage Act, we've got the Sedition Act. So you see the wording up here. I mean, look at the fines. $10,000 and 20 years in prison. That is a lot of money in 1917 for anyone who does any of these things, okay? Willfully making false statements, doing any of those things. Sedition Act is going after more of printed material, any language intended to obstruct the war effort in any way. So now look at the First Amendment. I mean, there it is. Congress shall make no law limiting freedom of speech or press. So to me, it looks like both of these laws limit speech and press. So how is this going to work? How are they going to pull this off and have it be constitutional? That's what we're going to try to uncover. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys three different cases, and I want you to pause and talk over with a person sitting nearby you. If you think this person is guilty, which crime are they guilty of, and what should their punishment be? So here's case one. Kate Richards O'Hare. In a speech to a small crowd in 1917, Kate Richards O'Hare told mothers they were no better than breeding pigs if they let the government send their sons to Europe to fight and die. As a result of the speech, Mrs. O'Hare was, what do you think? Is she guilty? Is she totally fine? Is she supported? So pause this for a moment. Talk it over with someone. While you do, I'm going to put back over here, I'm going to put our two different laws. Which law or laws do you think she violated, or did she not? So go ahead and pause, and we'll come back. All right, you got your verdict? So I will tell you what the actual charge was, if there was one. So in this particular case, Mrs. O'Hare was arrested and charged with violating the Espionage Act by obstructing enlistment. She was found guilty and sentenced to 5 years in a federal penitentiary. 5 years for saying that. Okay, let's look at our second case. Case 2, Masses Magazine. On June 16, 1917, Postmaster General Albert S. Burleson directed local postmasters to watch for newspapers and magazines containing materials that might cause insubordination, disloyalty, mutiny, or other actions that might obstruct the government's war effort. Within a month of Burleson's declaration, many publications have been excluded from the mail, including the magazine Masses. Masses sought readers among young intellectuals and took a strong stand against the war in its articles and cartoons. So, what do you think? Is this in violation of any particular law? If so, which one? And what should their punishment be? I'm going to put the laws back up for you. There they are. So hit pause, talk it over with a person nearby. All right, we're back. Let's go back to case 2. All right, let's see what you thought. So here's what happened. They were convicted under the Espionage Act, and the publishers of Masses had their second-class mailing privileges revoked. Last case we're going to look at, Walter Matthey. After 1918, some 2,100 persons were indicted under the provisions of the Sedition Act. So let's see if Walter Matthey qualifies. Matthey attended a meeting where, according to the Iowa Attorney General, he listened to a speech in which disloyal statements were made, applauded some of the statements, and contributed 25 cents to the meeting's organizers. So he didn't say anything, okay? He listened, he clapped, and he gave a quarter. Let's go back to our laws. What do you think? Is this enough? Guilty? Not guilty? And if so, what's a fair punishment? Pause, and we'll come back. All right, case 3. Here's what happened. Matthey was arrested, charged with violating the Sedition Act, and sentenced to a year in jail for listening, clapping, and giving a quarter. So this is a case here where we start to say, all right, when is it too far? When are we going across the line? When are we violating civil liberties in the name of security? You know, and that's something that we really need to think about. I think it's very relevant even today. So what we're going to do now is you're going to get one of two sources. You're either going to get a speech that Eugene Debs gave in Canton, Ohio, or you're going to get a pamphlet that was written by a guy named Schenck, and we're going to look at the recruitment pamphlet that he has there. So first question, so you're going to read it on your own silently for maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes. Won't take you long. First question I want you to think about. Did they break the law? Okay, so think about that. And then number 2, were critics of World War I anti-American? Why or why not? So I want you to think about both those things when you're reading your source. So let's pause here, read the source, and then I want you to talk about it first before we press play again. So I want you to talk about those 2 questions. Okay, did you discuss those 2 questions? Because if not, pause me. I want you to make sure you discuss those 2 questions. If you did, I'm going to tell you what happened. All right, Eugene Debs was served 32 months in prison for giving that speech. 32 months. He wasn't released until President Harding released him in 1921. That's a long time for giving a speech, right? Especially when we've got a First Amendment. So, and Schenck served 6 months in prison. So we've got some serious hefty fines going along with these laws. So this really kind of, Schenck's case went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court looked at it and came up with a pretty famous ruling in the case Schenck versus United States. This was in 1919. So I want us to take a look at the ruling. Okay, right here I've got sort of the highlights of Oliver Wendell Holmes's ruling here. Let's just look at it together because there's some pretty famous lines from this ruling. The character of every act depends upon the circumstances in which it is done. The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely yelling "fire" in a theater and causing panic. So this is where we get that phrase, you know, is your speech yelling fire in a crowded theater? That's going to be what we call the litmus test in the courts. If your speech is the equivalent of that, if it's going to incite panic, then you cannot say it. Okay, let's go on. The question in every case is whether the words are used in such circumstances and are of such nature as to create a clear and present danger. There's another big phrase. That they will bring about the substantive evils that Congress has a right to prevent. So if your words have a clear and present danger, then Congress has a right to prevent those words. Okay? When a nation is at war, many things that may be said in a time of peace are such a hindrance to its effort that their utterance would not be endured so long as men fight, and that no court could regard them as protected by any constitutional right. So right here it says, just because it's a wartime, things you might be able to say in time of peace, you can't say. And that's all right. Congress is allowed to restrict that in the name of national security. So think about what this means for today, okay? Is it anti-American to criticize a war? Like just, I mean, what do you think about that? Is that something that's anti-American? Or is that absolutely American and in line with our First Amendment? I mean, it's a tough call, okay? In more recent years, I would say that we don't see as much speech limited, but I would say our Fourth Amendment rights, the right to search and seizure, okay? And I know I already said this in one class, but pre 9/11, if someone had told me when I was getting ready to get on a plane, Okay, I need you to open up your bag so I can search it. I need you to take your shoes off, take your belt off, take your coat off, give me your laptop, and stand on this weird machine and put your hands up so we can, like, scan you. I would be like, yeah, I'll see you in court because you're violating my Fourth Amendment rights. There's no way I would have done that. Now, when we fly, we don't even really think twice, right? We're like, here's my shoes, here's this, here's all my clothes, here, do whatever you need to do. Keep us safe. Like, we're so concerned with safety that we've given up a lot of our Fourth Amendment rights to the TSA. So is that necessary? Or is that a slippery slope? Like, where does it stop, right? These are the things that I think Schenck raises some really interesting questions that we can think about even today. So think about that, because in the national test, this is the kind of stuff they're going to really pull up. Not as much on fighting in World War I, more how do we deal with it at home? How does it shape law? How does it shape public opinion? How does it raise questions that we're still trying to answer?